Hi, I'm Carey Green from podcastfasttrack.com, and you are listening to Aimee J. and the Chasing Dreams podcast.
Welcome to Chasing Dreams podcast with Aimee J. Aimee believes that realizing a life without regrets is achieved by taking chances, chasing your dreams, making moves, and overcoming your doubts. The Chasing Dreams podcast will help you overcome life's obstacles, believe in your potential, and inspire you to face your fears. And now here's the woman who is passionately pursuing her dreams, Aimee J.
Hey Dream Chasers, this is Aimee J, and thank you so much for tuning into episode 72 of the Chasing Dreams podcast, which is mind-boggling, but even more mind-boggling, this is the last episode of 2016, because next week you guys should be with your family, relaxing and all that. So 2016, we're going to end it up with one of my favorite people who has done an amazing thing for the podcast, Carey Green, who does our show notes and, gets you guys all that information from the podcast episodes. He is on the show today. And, what matters most to Carey Green is that his life matters not just now, but for eternity. He's working hard every day to ensure that his life does matter in a variety of ways. Carey is a retired pastor turned entrepreneur. He's built and runs Podcast Fast Track, a company that provides professional audio, editing, and production, and SEO-rich show notes, which I can attest to, and has created a couple of online video courses, is the author of 9 books on topics ranging from Christian growth to business mindset to fiction. And his most recent project is launching in the new year, January 2017, and is called Live, Build, Change, a project at helping Christian men and women live an authentic Christian faith, build a business, part-time or full-time, and change the world by integrating the two. It's his dream to make his life matter by equipping others to make their lives matter for eternity. And what better way to launch something so amazing than the new year? Carey, I have questions.
Hopefully I have good answers, Aimee. It's so great to be on your show. Thanks for the invite.
It's beyond time. You've always been on the other side of the episodes, taking care of the show and the episodes and just, getting it done for us. And we are so grateful. So one, it gives me a chance to say thank you publicly for all that you do for Chasing Dreams. So thank you.
You are welcome. It's been our joy, our pleasure.
Yeah. And you guys do a great job. I mean, the links and just reminding people if they don't have a chance to re-listen, to be able to go back and get, the information, the tweets and the things you pull out are always fantastic. But now you're on this side of the podcast episode and you're on the hot seat. And I have questions. You're a retired pastor. How many years were you a pastor?
I was a pastor for right around 20 years. I lose track because there were a few stints in there where I was between churches. And so I had different jobs that were not ministry related, but altogether about 20 years.
20 years. Is that right out of school? Is that something you've always known or had a calling for?
It was right out of college. When I first started college, I was a music major with a business minor. And about a year and a half into that, felt like it was better for me to head toward a ministry career. And so I transferred schools and started studying youth ministry and got into a part-time youth ministry almost right away, even during college. After that, my wife and I, got into some positions where it was a full-time thing, doing associate pastor roles and things like that. And, as things like that go, it just kind of climbed the ladder, so to speak, and became a co-pastor, a preaching pastor, a pastor of small churches, and just kind of went on from there, various places all around the country.
And you retired 20 years later, which sounds like an amazing amount of time to be doing God's work and helping others. How do you know where you go from there? I mean, you're serving others. You still are. But did you go to the golf course? Did you celebrate in some way? What do you do when you retire?
The retirement was not really that kind of a retirement. I'm not even 50 years old yet. So it was a sense that the calling was gone to be in that line of work. And my conviction is that if you're in that line of work, the people that you're serving deserve someone whose heart is fully in it. And so I just didn't feel right asking them to continue supporting me in that role when I knew my heart wasn't in it. So I resigned with no idea what I was going to do, and had about 3 months worth of income set aside, which shocks me to this day that I even had that available, but started trying to figure it out. And there was no dream in place. There was no real sense of what I was going to do. So it was quite a strange time for us.
Now, I wasn't going to say anything, but yes, you are. I've met Carey in real life, and you guys probably can tell from the podcast episode cover page that you're a young man. So I was like, retiring at such a young age. But I can understand that. So you kind of put away one dream, and you're trying to figure out your next step. I mean, what did you do to go about that when you lost the calling in one sense, but at the same time, you're kind of a ship without a direction?
Yeah. It was confusing at first. I had already been doing a few online things to try and get a little bit of side income coming in, and none of them very successfully at that point, because I simply just didn't feel like I had the time working full time in the church. And, full time in the church can be 60 hours a week sometimes. So it was quite a load to try and add something to that. So once I got out of ministry, I started working at those things a little more diligently, trying to figure out, what's my thing? What am I supposed to be doing here? And in the meantime, had a friend who is a real estate agent here in our little town in Colorado, who suggested that I look into becoming a mortgage loan originator because they needed one in the area. And so I looked into it, sounded like a doable thing. And so I started studying, taking a class that you're required to take to get licensed, which was a new thing as of 2010. And as I was studying that package full of content to try and figure out how to become a loan originator and get licensed and pass the silly test, I realized that whole testing process that the government had put in place was really convoluted, and studying for it wasn't real intuitive. And so the teacher in me started coming out, and I started thinking, man, there could be an online course in this. And so I started, while I was studying for the test, I'd laugh at it now because it's so unbelievable. I started screen recording myself studying with the practice tests. Yeah, it was crazy, just live, just saying, here's how I'm studying, here's why I'm studying this way, here's what I'm doing, and thinking maybe I can put this into a course. And then as the days neared for me to take the test, I started realizing, well, this course won't matter for anything if I don't pass the stupid test. And so I did. I was able to pass the test, and probably within 10 days, I had that course online. And amazingly, it started selling almost immediately.
Just to make sure I understand, you did a real-world version, essentially, of yourself studying for an exam, passed the exam, put it online, and then people started buying it.
Yeah, it's sort of like that. I mean, it's packaged better than just, here's me on my computer studying. Sure. It's telling people how I'm doing it and why. And it was mainly to tell people how to study, not really what to study, but the questions are trick questions. They're confusing. It's regulations and ethics and all kinds of stuff woven together. And I just realized, people are going to be very confused by this, and they won't catch the trick questions that I'm seeing. And so I just put it on video, and it's there to this day, and makes a significant piece of income for us even to this day. So it's one of those little fortuitous things that I feel God led me into, that every time my phone cha-chings with another sale, I just laugh to myself because I'm not even a loan originator anymore. So it's really funny.
And I say it facetiously, guys, about the whole real world thing, but it's an interesting take because it's a different way of teaching others. When I took the bar exam for law in Maryland, I realized when I was being taught by the course instructors, they weren't teaching me what the law is in Maryland verbatim or anything like that. What they were really doing is kind of what you said, teaching you how to take the test, how to recognize certain things. And it's interesting that it's a different approach that, before law school and the bar exam, I didn't think of doing. And so the fact that you kind of caught on to that and used that as, a way to help others it doesn't surprise me in the fact of knowing how you are and who you are, but, amazing that you took advantage of that opportunity to, put it out there and that it's still doing well for you.
Yeah. It's funny. I'd gotten the idea, I guess, from an episode of Pat Flynn's podcast, Smart Passive Income Podcast. And the guy had done a kind of a course similar to that. And it just, I don't know. It just came out of me as I was studying and just turned into a really good thing. So I'm very thankful for it. That's for sure.
Well, you were a pastor. You created a video online course, and your other notable things are you're an author. Was that your next step of kind of figuring out what it is your calling was at that time?
Well, some of those books were written while I was a pastor, especially the Christian growth-oriented things. They were things that I had put together for people I was working with and realized after a while, hey, with e-publishing and all that kind of stuff being a reality now, these could probably be books. So I paid a few people to help me format them and get covers and that kind of stuff and got them online. So it's not like I'm selling thousands of copies of those, but they are things that I've created. And then the fiction came about from stories that I had told to my kids when they were little, and they had urged me for years and years and years to make them into books. And so I finally did, and the final product really didn't resemble the stories I told them at all, other than the characters were the same and the setting was the same. But the books have turned out to be fairly popular with a certain niche of people, and it's been fun.
I mean, it just sounds like you've been doing a lot of things that you've been enjoying or trying new things to figure out where your fit is. So I'm curious, like I said, I have questions. How did you stumble into podcasting?
Well, that's interesting. When I was in college and in high school, I had some brief stints as a radio announcer. And so I knew the audio part of things. But when I did that work, it was back in the day when you had to splice the tape with a razor blade and tape it together if you wanted to make an edit. I mean, it was crazy hard to do back in those days. And when digital audio came along, I became familiar with the free program Audacity early on in my foray in the online space. And so I just played around with it a lot, just doing various things. And while I was still pastoring, I had started a podcast about the Christian family and realized as I was working on things like that I had some talent there with the editing and with the writing. And those two talents kind of came together. And then after I had resigned from my pastoral career, I was helping an online friend do some editing on his podcast. And just out of the blue, he said, you should make a business out of this. And it was like the light went on. And because I knew the pain point, I knew absolutely this is a need. And for podcasters who have better things to do than sit and edit audio, this would be a no-brainer sale. And so I started packaging things together and trying to figure out what the business would look like, and had, 3 or 4 clients within a month.
I mean, it's funny how other people recognize some of the things we should be doing faster than we do ourselves.
Yeah.
Which it sounds like you had that opportunity there. But you've been doing that and Podcast Fast Track for a few years, and now you're about to start on this new adventure, it sounds like, with your new project, Live, Build, Change. And so before we talk about that, though, I kind of want to talk about how you have one dream and you're working on it, and now a second one has been, I guess, in your mind. And what was that like? Did you ever think, I have to have one, I can't have both? Or what was your mindset when the Live, Build, Change started coming into your mindset?
Yeah, I have long been conflicted by the advice I hear on the internet that you have to have one passion. You need to follow it. You need to niche down, all those phrases you hear
everywhere.
And and the logic behind it makes sense to me, because, if you speak to everybody, you don't really speak to anybody. I totally get that. But for me, I guess the way I've come to look at it is my passion, my dream is bigger than just editing podcasts or just running a business. My passion has to do with funding causes and things in the world that I care deeply about. Some of that has to do with my family and the kind of economic status we're able to enjoy because of the business that I've been able to create. But beyond that, it's the opportunity to be generous to people who are in need and to fund causes that I really care about. I mean, my dream, which I'm not to yet, is that within the rest of my lifetime, I'm able to fund 3 or 4 Bible translations for people groups that have never had the Bible in their language. I mean, that's just an example of the kind of things I'm aiming at. And to me, that doesn't depend on a specific niche kind of business. It depends on that broader vision of helping in that greater way that has come up in my heart. And Live, Build, Change really is just a manifestation of that desire and trying to spark it in other people. Because I believe if more people than me are doing this, thinking beyond themselves, beyond the income their business gives them, to what that business could achieve in terms of good for the world, man, I think we could really make a big difference.
And, you have helped a number of people in different forms and different variations. And I'm sure you're going to help even more so in 2017 with Live, Build, Change. Do you find that with the people you've talked to, people who have passions or dreams, given the topic of what the podcast is, do you think they limit themselves by the things they hear on the internet and what you were talking about how niching down and kind of focusing on that one area? Are we limiting ourselves when we do that?
I think we are, and I think it's hard to be categorical about it because, those people are being categorical because they believe in it and it's worked for them. But what I'm coming to realize is that's them. That's what they needed to do, and that's why they speak so strongly about it. But I think there are others, and it's not that one's better than the other, but I think there are other people who are wired differently and have broad interests in a number of areas and actually might be good at all of them. And those multiple targets definitely make it hard to manage time and not be, like the dog chasing the squirrel sort of a thing. But I think there are people in the world who are like that. And I've just kind of come to terms with the fact that I'm probably one of them, and I need to learn time management and all that so I can make the best out of it. But man, I can't not chase these things. They're just part of me.
And you're doing it really well. So let's talk about Live, Build, Change. How long has this been in the works?
It's been percolating in my mind for probably 6 to 8 months prior to this recording, December 2016, in small ways. And then I started probably 3 months ago seriously working on it. Built a website, have started recording podcast episodes, and have one of the editors on my team is my oldest son, and he's just all jazzed about it too. So he's doing the editing and I'm creating the show notes, and we're putting this all together kind of ahead of time so we can launch with a whole lot of content already in the hopper, and kind of strategize about how to put it out, what order to put things out in. And it's been really fun to work on it.
So that's actually a great segue. As we're heading out of 2016 into 2017, you took some time and you've been kind of working on it, planning it. Have you been adapting your plan as time has gone by, or do you have a set plan and it's been, let's knock it out one at a time? And, if a roadblock comes, address it then. Or has it been the opposite, which is, just kind of feeling how things are and taking it as it comes?
No, we've had to tweak it as we've gone along because, my I don't know if it's my zeal, but my belief in the project has waned at times. Mm-hmm. And some of it's just because of the obstacles you face, the resistance that you come up against, whether it's internal or external. You just doubt yourself like we all do. And so I've had times where I've got on Slack with my son and I've said, hey, I don't know if I'm really going to do this thing. I know we've already recorded 7 episodes, but I'm not feeling real encouraged about it. And he'll respond with this, what? What are you talking about? This is great stuff, So he'll respond to me and encourage me and build me up. And I find that the camaraderie around the project has been really helpful to keep it on track. And the more I work on it, the more I see it is going to be a great thing. Whether I help 5 people or 5,000 people, that doesn't really matter. It's encouraging people to do something bigger than they think they can do. And I think if it's only 5 people that's affected by that, if those 5 people are doing bigger things than they expected, hey, I've done my job.
Now, I want to talk about the 5 people, but before we do that, you had said something that actually caught my interest in the sense that I felt the same way recently. And in talking to some friends of mine, I found they felt the same way, in that for whatever reason, most of us found ourselves in a funk, if that's the best way to put it. And it was more than a day. It was more than a week. It was probably 3 weeks for me, and others varied in and out. There was no really explaining why for the funk, if you will. And you said your interest may have waned. How did you come out of that? And was there a long period of waning?
No, it wasn't a long period for me. It was maybe a week or two, and it was all internal. It was going on. I hadn't talked to my son yet until that message that I sent him, and I guess what snapped me out of it was just his enthusiasm about it, because he's my son.
Sure,
and I'm excited to continue mentoring him, even though he's an adult and has kids of his own. I want to continue investing in his life. And if he, through listening to and editing the podcast, is getting something out of it, man, there's reason enough for me to continue. And so then my mindset opened up and I'm realizing, oh, well, it's not just going to be him. Of course, there's going to be others. And if I do a good job trying to promote it and build the audience ahead of time, who knows what could happen. And so, it was kind of that churn internally that discouraged me. And I think sometimes just, bad habits of thinking and stuff like that. And I've just learned a long time ago, I can't doubt in the darkness what I've seen in the light. And so if I'm in a dark time like that and I'm finding myself doubting, I just need to go to sleep and wake up again the next day, and I'll probably have a better perspective about it.
That's actually some great advice. Can you say it again? Doubt in the darkness?
Yeah, we shouldn't doubt in the darkness what we've seen in the light. It's kind of like, if you saw your car was parked outside in the bright of the day and then you go in the house and it's dark and you look out and you can't see your car. Well, you shouldn't call the police that someone stole your car. I mean, it's dark. You can't see it. And that happens in life. We get these moods or these I don't know, funks, like you called it. That's a word I use too, by the way. They happen. They just happen. And there's no explaining them. And so during those times, don't doubt what you're already passionate about prior to that. Just wait till it kind of passes. Then you can see clearly again and move forward from there.
Or lean on the resources and people who are in your life, like your son, for you. And usually they're fantastic with knocking you out of any funk.
Yeah, exactly. That's what a good support system does for you. That's a great point.
Yeah. And so, I love that your son kind of brought it home for you, because sometimes others see when we're hard on ourselves, they bring us back out of it. And I'm glad, because you're working on this project and it's about to launch, and you're talking about how even if you don't have 1,000 or 100 people, even if it's just 5, let's talk a little bit about measurement of dreams, because, you're about to start a new one. You've kind of worked on a previous one. How do you, at this point, prior to launch, prior to the cusp of seeing the reality of your dream, weigh success for yourself?
Wow, that's a great question, because weighing success, I think, is as individual as we are as people. For me, success in this at this point is that I'm being faithful to do what I think I'm called to do. It doesn't have to do with numbers, doesn't have to do with amount of people listening. It has to do with me doing what I feel like I'm supposed to do. And it's already encouraging my son and giving him some better equipping for running a business of his own in the future, which he wants to do. And that's enough for me right now. Live, Build, Change is one of those things that I see as something I'm able to give back to the world because of the business I've been able to build, the podcast Fast Track business. And so at this point, I have very few plans for monetizing Live, Build, Change. It's all going to be free content, giving out to people. The only things I can even imagine that might get monetized in the future will be like events we might do, or if I'm asked to go speak somewhere, or things like that. But if I create courses, they're probably going to just be free video courses that I put on the site and anybody can access them, because I feel like that's part of this bigger vision that I have for my life, this bigger dream than just building a podcast company. I mean, now I have some time in my schedule where I can do things like that. And so at that point, it's even going to be hard to measure, because I won't know through purchases that people are benefiting from these courses. It'll just be the occasional person who responds and says, hey, I really appreciated that. I mean, that's the only way I'm going to know. So I think I'm going to have to stick with that faithfulness answer and just say, I've just got to do what I know I'm supposed to do and be content with that.
And I think that's a great way to put it, in multiple ways that you've said, but also the fact that we all measure things differently, and was speaking to a podcast guest previously, and one of the things they said was, we need to stop comparing ourselves to others and measuring ourselves by their stick instead of our own.
Yeah. I heard someone today just on another client's podcast say that when we compare with others, we tend to conform to whatever standard it is that they have, rather than being the unique us that we've been made to be. And I loved that. That's
a great point. It is. Because when you conform, it's almost like you're settling for something. And the side effect of that is you may not be giving a part of yourself that you should be giving.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about it is you don't know you're settling. You just think this is how it's supposed to be because that's the standard that's put before me. But, thinking outside the box, who says that's the standard? And who says it's the standard for me? I'm called to something different, most likely. So I got to figure out what that is. And ironically, that's the thing that's going to bring the most value to the world because it's exactly who I'm made to be.
Right. And the thing is, if everybody wanted the same model that Pat Flynn has, I love Pat. He's a fantastic guy, does amazing things, but if everyone did the same thing Pat did, it'd be a very boring internet world.
Yeah, I agree.
And the thing is, you're bringing something to the table that's different and is niched in a sense, towards people bettering themselves, live, build, change. And who knows what you can inspire based off of that for someone in 2018 or 2017.
Yeah.
And they give their own spin, and it's each a little spin. And so as you've been putting this together, have you been keeping it broad in the sense of your topics and your, so while the audience is niched, are you keeping everything kind of overall general?
No, well, maybe. There are some of the episodes that I've recorded so far that are broad enough that anybody could apply the principles I'm talking about. But somewhere in every episode, partly because of my pastoral background, I'm bringing in scripture because this is niched toward Christians who want to build a business. And so I know there are things that I say on certain episodes that are going to make people who aren't of the Christian faith really angry or really irritated that I'm bringing in that Jesus stuff again. Well, it's not for you,
Right.
I'm not speaking to you if that's the response you have. And so I've had to just kind of hold that tension in my own soul that this is not for everybody and I shouldn't expect it to appeal to everybody. And so when I integrate issues of faith into the practice of business and do so intentionally that I know it's going to alienate some people, that's just what I have to do in order to speak the message I feel like I'm supposed to speak.
It reminds me of the scenario where, there's a certain type of movie that I'm not a fan of, movies like Old School. They're not really my type of movie, crude comedy and humor. It's not really me.
Yeah.
So,
me either.
Right. So, but if I go there and I know that that's what I'm going to be hearing, it's not really the producers or the act. It's no one's fault except my own, knowing that that's what the intent is. That's what they're doing, to be upset with that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Right. So when people come in to your podcast and to your platform, they should be aware of what's coming. So, I definitely don't want you, and hope you don't ever change your view because of that, because, you're serving a particular audience, and those are the people that, if they are upset, that's a different story. But, because they're the ones you are essentially catering to.
Yeah.
So I always think of that, and it's always interesting. But the reason I asked that question is, with this podcast, we talk about chasing dreams, and a lot of times people hear from entrepreneurs or people of different backgrounds, and they think, well, this isn't going to apply to me. This isn't something that will help me because mine is X, Y, and Z. And what you're talking about is ABC. Do you find that if anybody comes to live, build, change, outside of the Christianity perspective of it, would they be served?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, we're talking about business principles a lot of the time and mindset issues a lot of the time. And we all need help in those things, no matter how experienced you are in business or in dealing with your mindset. You can always grow in those areas. And so the things I have to say, I think for most people will be helpful. It's when I bring in the particular approach that Christianity would take to the issue that people may tune out. And that's okay. They, may have gotten their chunk of goodness for the episode and want to turn it off then. That's fine with me. It's not going to offend me at all.
Well, I think that's a really good mindset to have, because I think if we get stuck in trying to please everyone 100% of the time with 100% of our content, it's a dangerous road to go down.
Oh, yeah. I had to learn that when I was, preaching every morning for 352 weeks a year. You just have to say what you have to say, and you can't be worried about the response. And it won't please everybody, and that's okay.
So is the way to get, I don't want to say over that, but to accept that, is it just a matter of suck it up, that's how it is, accept it? Or is there something to kind of help people who may be struggling with that acceptance?
That's an interesting question because I haven't really thought it through. I think that it depends on the individual, because some of us, because of our baggage or our background or how we were raised, really starve for that acceptance. We almost live on it. We call it around our house PBA, performance-based acceptance. We feel like we are not acceptable unless we're performing in a way that people approve of. And man, that's toxic. And some people, it's a harder battle to fight than others, and I don't know that I'm really qualified to speak on it, because I was raised in a home where, I remember in junior high, my girlfriend broke up with me, and my mom's response was, there are other fish in the sea. And so I grew up with that. Yeah, I grew up with that mindset. Just, get over it. You'll be better tomorrow, that kind of thing. And so, I understand that mindset and that struggle, because I have people close to me who struggle with it. And I think each of us has our own path to walk in that. And learning to realize, I guess maybe the best thing I could say is just to accept the truth, because it is the truth that you cannot please everyone. You just can't. Because if you try to, you're not going to please anybody, because you're not being your authentic self. And so if you can accept that truth as a starting point, I think you're on the right path.
And see, the interesting thing is, even with the questions I'm asking Carey, some things are easier to answer than others, and some are more black and white than gray, and I think the thing and lesson to take is, especially as we're closing out one year and heading into another, is, there is no necessarily, would you say that there is multiple answers to things?
Yeah, sometimes, depending on where you've come from. And I'm not saying truth itself is relative. I believe truth is absolute, but I think that because of how we are wired as individuals and the things that have made us who we are, we view truth differently. And it takes us a while to work through the process of discovering what it really is. And so for some people, that's a fairly quick journey. For others, it's not, depending on the issue. There's multiple issues involved in that. So it's just a different journey for each of us, going back to the people who tout the finding your niche and niching down and following only one passion. Like I said, they're so strong about it because that's the way it worked for them. But that doesn't mean it's going to work that way for everybody.
And I think that is the thing to remember. Some things will work for other people and some things will work for you. And that goes back to the other part of, focus on your own story,
Yeah.
Focus on your own drive and passion. As we're wrapping up and heading into the new year, right? What do you do to get ready for that new year? Is there anything in particular that you do to kind of prepare for it?
I long time ago stopped making New Year's resolutions because they weren't helpful to me. They were, this one more expectation to put on myself that I probably wasn't going to fulfill, at least at the point I stopped making them. That's how I felt. But I do practice a sort of personal planning for the new year. And just because the new year is a convenient time to kind of assess and look forward. And so I usually take a couple of days sometime after the beginning of the year to kind of get away by myself. If I can find a cabin to go off to by myself alone, I will. And I write out personal goals. I write out goals as a father, as a husband, as a businessman, as a friend. Back in the day, it was as a pastor, things I wanted to accomplish and more so felt like I should accomplish. And I guess I've done a lot of that this year with this Live, Build, Change thing, because I've had to think it through a lot before I could actually pull the trigger. And so, for me, it is helpful to be intentional about the next period of time, whether it's a year or the next 3 months, and set some goals and then kind of regressively go back to the step right before the goal and what would that look like? And then the step before that, what would that look like until you get to where you are? And then you've got a map kind of that you have to be flexible with, but at least you have a path to start walking.
And guys, as you're wrapping up 2016, you should be doing that.
Yeah,
I think it's great advice. And I think I do something of a similar type for myself. And I think it's a very powerful thing to do.
Yeah, I do too. I think that the Bible says without vision, the people perish. And so, you have to have something you're moving towards, something that your days are consumed with, or else you just kind of float. It's funny, when I first got married, my wife told me I floated, and I didn't have any idea what that meant. But she was totally right. I was raised in a way that I just didn't think about things very deeply. And so, she's helped me to learn to be more intentional and purposeful in my interactions and in my plans and in my goals. And man, it enriches life so much. You're right on about that, Aimee.
And, guys, we want to probably give you guys some time to think about that. So, Carey, before we end, what's coming. What is one thing you would tell someone who's chasing their dream?
Boy, I got to think about that. I knew you were going to ask it, and I still don't have a good answer. I think
everybody has that same kind of answer, which is hilarious. But you, sir, and you've done every episode of the show notes, so you definitely knew this one was coming.
I did. I absolutely knew it was coming. I think what I would say to someone who's chasing their dreams is be flexible. We tend to think that sitting down, making that plan and knowing every step of it is the answer. But that's not the answer, because often our vision of what the dream's going to look like is not really what it's going to look like in the end, because we're not omniscient. We don't see the future clearly. We just have an idea really of where we're headed. And so as you're on the path and as you're approaching the consummation of that dream, be flexible. Let yourself take little diversions here and there to get to the dream that might look different than what you thought it was, because I guarantee you, if it's the dream you're supposed to be chasing, it's going to be much better than even what you imagined. So just be flexible and get there in your own good time.
Some great advice, especially as we head into New Year, guys. Carey, as we wrap up the year, thank you so much for one, for what you do for the show, two, for all the advice you gave to everyone on this episode, and wishing you nothing but the best in the new year and with the new program that you have, Live, Build, Change. And I hope it helps many, many, many more as you have in the previous years.
Well, thanks, Aimee. Same to you. God bless you in the new year.
And guys, that was Mr. Carey Green, who has been such a friend of the show. He has done all the show notes for all of the episodes up to and including this one. And so we are grateful, blessed, and thankful to have him helping us with that. And, you guys can find all of the show notes and links mentioned, including to his new project, Live, Build, Change, on the show notes page over at chasingdreamshq.com/episode 72. That's episode 72. Now, guys, as this is the last episode of 2016, I tend to leave that last week off so that you guys can please enjoy it with your family and friends and, be merry and prepare for the new year. It's a very important time. Listen to what Carey said, be flexible, and as you review how 2016 went, try not to be too hard on yourself. Okay. It's very easy to do that, but please don't, take whatever lesson it is you can from the experience and allow yourself forgiveness for missing something if you missed it, or, congratulations and kudos if you did do something. So, we got to be fair to ourselves when we look back, because it's very easy to just go down the negative path and just not be positive for the new year. So when 2017 comes, I want you guys to go in with a bang. Okay. So first episode of the new year is coming up, 73. That will be me talking about the new year and things to come after I do my own look back, review, look forward, plan out things, and we'll chat about that in the new year in episode 73. But for now, you guys go, have fun, be with your family, friends, have a happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. And until next time, guys, keep chasing.
Thank you so much for listening to Chasing Dreams. Aimee would love to connect with you and hear all about your pursuit of chasing your dreams. Connect with her on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram via @ChasingDreamsHQ, Or you can find Aimee on Twitter at AimeeJ21. That's AIMEEJ21. Be sure to visit headquarters over at ChasingDreamsHQ.com for more inspiration, motivation, and resources to help with your own dream chase. We hope you'll join Aimee next week, and until then, keep chasing.